After 12 years, the voters in Warren will select a new mayor. Hello, I'm Charlie Langton, and tonight, TV Warren presents the debate for mayor between Jim Fouts and Richard Salaka. I should point out that this is the only face-to-face debate that is scheduled at the present time. Let's meet the candidates for the new mayor of Warren right now. First, he is serving his 26th year on the Warren City Council, currently its president, a former high school government and psychology instructor, and known as the neighborhood councilman, Jim Fouts. Also, he has served 8 years as Warren City Clerk, currently the clerk. Prior to that, 8 years on the Warren City Council, a 40-year resident of Warren. He is a graduate of Fitzgerald High School, married and father of 3, Richard Salaka. Those are the candidates for mayor. Let's meet the panelists who will be questioning these candidates. First, Brian Lowers from the Warren Weekly, Amber Hunt from the Detroit Free Press, and finally, Rob Davidak, the news director from WWJ News Radio 950. Tonight's debate will be divided into 3 parts. First, the candidates will make an opening statement, followed by questions and answers from the panelists. And then finally, the candidates will give a closing. I should point out that the candidates do not know the questions nor the topic areas, and all issues pertaining to Warren are free for all in this debate. Now, just prior to the debate, a coin toss occurred to see who would give the first opening statement, and Jim Fouts will give the first opening statement. Mr. Fouts.
Thank you, Charlie. I'm Jim Fouts. I've been your City Council President for 26 years, and I've also worked for you as your neighborhood councilman. I hope to become your neighborhood mayor. In those 26 years as your neighborhood councilman, I have helped residents take care of various problems, both in the evenings, on the weekends, and even on holidays. Indeed, just a few years ago, we had a serious problem with stacked condos where a developer wanted to put in substandard housing in the northeast section of the city called stacked condos without basements. I worked with the homeowner leaders Elva Diavardi and Faith Nowakowski, and I was able to go door to door and organize the residents, and we successfully stopped that proposal from going through at the ZBA. A few years earlier, we had a serious problem in the northwest section of the city involving a young boy, a 7th grader, was crossing the 14-mile road to go to Furman Junior High School, and he was killed by a driver who wasn't aware of what was going on. It was a very tragic event. A lot of residents called me up, particularly people who had children, and asked me what I could do. I did research, and I found that what really was needed was a flashing light to warn drivers coming from either the east or the west that there was a school zone. So I appeared before the Sterling Heights Council, proposed that we have a flashing light and a sign saying the speed limit must be 25. And I did the same with my own council, and the result was that if you drive through 14-mile road, you will see a flashing light on both sides, and there's been no serious fatality since then. As your neighborhood councilman, I intend to take action as your neighborhood mayor, and those type of problems and more will be part of my obligation to you. So if you have a neighborhood complaint or concern, call Jim Fouts at 573-8058, and I promise you that if I'm elected mayor, the city will not ignore you, but it will respond to your neighborhood concerns. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim Fouts. Now, let's hear from Richard Salaka. Mr. Salaka.
Thank you, Charlie, members of the media, and citizens of Warren. Our city is in trouble. The state of Michigan is in bad shape, and our economy is in trouble. If you read the papers, it is obvious we can't count on Lansing or Washington to solve our problems. We have to find a way out of these tough times ourselves. Over 2,000 Warren residents are facing foreclosure on their homes. We need a plan for economic redevelopment to bring new jobs to the city. I have that plan. I brought economic leaders together who recommended ways that we can bring jobs to Warren. Jobs mean opportunities for us and our families. My opponent has single-handedly opposed and sometimes almost stopped every single job creation in the last 10 years in our city. His efforts to fight the tank plant redevelopment, which I chaired, and General Motors' investment alone would have eliminated nearly 5,000 jobs coming to our city. He may talk a different story now, but that's the truth. Effective management requires consensus building. My opponent has never attempted to build a consensus among council members nor between council and the mayor. In his 26 years on council, he has opposed every mayor on every progressive issue without ever offering a solution or alternative. My opponent's behavior creates chaos and confusion at every council meeting. How can he manage an entire city when he can't even manage a council meeting? By the way, if Jim Fouts is elected, he will make history in the city of Warren as our first $1 million mayor. That's $1 million that could go to job creation or to help make our budget ends meet. The truth is, we just can't afford Jim Fouts. I will provide the strong leadership and consensus building that Warren needs. I will be more than a neighborhood mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard Salaka. Now we'll begin the second part of the debate, the question and answer. A panelist will ask a candidate a question. That candidate will have a minute response, and the other candidate will have a rebuttal. The panelists will be given the opportunity to re-ask the question or clarify an answer. I will start this session. I'll ask Jim Fouts. Actually, both candidates. We'll start with Mr. Fouts. Both of you have criticized the new City Hall. Some say it just simply costs too much. Others say it's just plain ugly. If you had the opportunity, would you sell City Hall? Mr. Fouts?
Well, I think that is a good question. I think it's not a question of selling the City Hall because I think past decisions have hurt our residents, but I think people ought to realize that the money that went toward the City Hall could have gone toward basic essential services that I fought for, such as the Fitzgerald Rec Building, such as the Central City Swimming Pool, such as the EMS and things of that nature. So the City Hall is draining, the DDA is draining the budget of approximately $6 million a year. We are $118 million in debt. What we do need to do is complete the job that's already begun in terms of the DDA, but in terms of selling the City Hall, unfortunately, I don't think we can make this decision at that point. But I would add this in terms of the DDA. When I become mayor, I want to evaluate the entire situation and look at what other ways that we could utilize that development.
Thank you. Rebuttal, Mr. Salaka?
I would not be interested in selling the City Hall. It's very important for the city of Warren to have a distinct identity. Not that I would have built the City Hall to the magnitude that it was built, but we did need a new City Hall, and we are bonded for the new City Hall. When this administration took office, there was $10 million in bonding. Today, we have $110 million in bonding. I oppose additional bonding for the City Hall, for the Civic Center area, but my position today is that we have to complete the job that the previous administration and the council started. So I'll work hard to bring development. I've already spoken to developers because we have to build the balance of the City Hall. We have an additional 18 acres left, and we have to build out.
Thank you, Mr. Salaka. Brian Lowers from the Warren Weekly. Next question, please.
My question's for both of you, actually. I'll ask it first to Mr. Salaka. In your literature and in conversations with the media, you both describe yourselves as the candidates for change. With so many years in politics between the two of you collectively, decades of service on the council and in the clerk's office, Mr. Salaka, what change will you bring as mayor, and how will that be different between what you'll bring and what your opponent will bring?
Well, I'll bring positive change to the city of Warren. The city of Warren, like I said in my opening speech, is in trouble. We need somebody that can bring jobs to the city of Warren. Unlike my opponent, I've brought jobs. I have a proven track record of bringing jobs into the city. People are losing their homes. We have 2,000 homes in foreclosure, and I brought approximately 2,000 jobs to the city of Warren through the tank plant redevelopment when I chaired the tank plant redevelopment. In addition to that, I supported the General Motors program. Now, my opponent has continuously voted against progress, has continuously voted against bringing jobs to the city of Warren. and I'm completely different than my opponent. My opponent wants to be the neighborhood mayor, but I will be more than the neighborhood mayor, because you need to be more than the neighborhood mayor to lead the third largest city in the state of Michigan.
Mr. Fouts.
Contrary to what my opponent states, I indeed have fought for jobs. I supported the Chrysler stamping, which was a $64 million investment. I supported GM Powertrain, which was a $282 million investment. I supported Keogh Cutters, which is an $865,000 investment. Bosco Pizza, $1.87 million. Sure Alloy gave 34 new jobs. Universal Mall, $12 million. Warren Screw Products, $2.5 million. Gens Industries, $6 million. I believe that I am the person who can change things, and I want to change the atmosphere at City Hall so that City Hall is more concerned about residents' needs than the committee to elect. And unlike my opponent, I didn't have to spend $220,000 to get elected to the top vote-getting position in the primary. I only spent $11,000. So unlike my opponent, I will represent the people and not the special interest groups who paid his way.
Ryan Lowers, a follow-up question?
Jim, my follow-up question's for Jim. Richard alluded in his opening and also in his comments just previously about his support for the tank plant and the redevelopment there. Do you did not support that project when you had a chance to vote for it in the 90s? Have you rethought that position?
Well, I had concerns about, number one, pollution. The tank plant was a polluted area, and I was concerned about the city of Warren buying a polluted area. In addition, I had requested that the administration give certain information, and I was not able to get that. And I had concerns regarding the residents' concerns about getting involved in polluted land, so that was my main concern. But it's interesting to note I was also concerned about the financial aspects of this, and as it turned out, the money that supposedly we got didn't go to the residents, but it went to my opponent's 401 plan. $20 million of that went to his plan to give him a jackpot 401 amount of money. And by the way, the 401 is draining money out of the general pension system.
Mr. Solaka, you can respond.
There you go again, Jim, telling lies to the people of the city of Warren. You ought to tell them the truth. You ought to know what a pension is. But you know what? Your statement to the press was, I don't know what my pension is. Mr. Fouts, if you don't know what your pension is, you're 63 years old, you're 26 years on the city council, you don't deserve to be mayor. That's number one. Number two, you oppose the tank plant. Do you know the tank plant brought $34 million in revenue to the city of Warren? Let's talk truth, Mr. Fouts. Let's not change the story now that you want to become mayor. Let's talk about all the issues that you voted against. Let's talk about the jobs that you voted against. Let's talk about the Warren Community Center that you voted against. Mr. Fouts, you don't have the qualifications to run a city the size of the city of Warren.
All right. Rob Davidak, WWJ, please ask Jim Fouts the next question. Rob?
Mr. Fouts, I've covered a number of cities throughout Michigan in my years as a journalist, and would say the perception is Warren politics are quote-unquote crazy. Perception being that across the region, how does that perception damage the city's image, and how would you change that perception as mayor?
Well, I think I would change the perception by not doing what my opponent is doing. My opponent has sent out 3 personal attack pieces against me. He's also called a press conference at which he bashed me. He also had a so-called appreciation dinner for his election workers, and he proceeded to bash me there. And I don't think that raises the political level to anything but gutter politics. I refuse to get involved in gutter politics, but what I will do is I will demand that my administrators be professional. I will expect the best and the brightest from people, and citizens, when they go to City Hall, will be treated with respect, and that's the tone of my administration. The best and the brightest, professionalism, and above all else, serving the needs of the public.
Mr. Solaka, rebuttal?
We need to give Warren a distinct identity. Warren needs to be a destination place where people will come to work, to live, and to raise a family. And talking about perception, my opponent is the one that has continuously bashed the city of Warren, called the city of Warren Rat City, compared the city of Warren to their neighbors to the north, okay? And my opponent is the one that gives the perception that Warren is not a good place to live. Warren's a great place to live. The people of the city of Warren are great people. And let me get back to the pension issue, and he talks about a 401A. 401, if you know anything about pensions, costs the taxpayers 15% of my pay. Your refusal to go into the 401 means that you're costing the taxpayers 45% of your pay. And you know, as well as we stand here, that you will be the $1 million mayor. And Mr. Faust, why don't you admit it? You came up with a proposal at the last council meeting, and I want to see that acted on.
All right, thank you, Mr. Salaka. Rob, you want to follow up a question or no? We'll go to Amber Hunt of the Free Press. Please ask Richard Salaka the next question. Amber?
Hi, Mr. Slaka.
Hi, Amber.
You mentioned that Warren is a great place to live, but we also know that it has a pretty hefty crime rate. What would you as mayor do to try and combat that?
Okay. I'm proposing, when I become mayor, and you'll hear the details in the next few days, a police station to be placed on 9.5 on Van Dyke, a precinct, not a mini station that Mr. Fouts proposed when he was council president that failed and closed. I'm talking about a 24-hour police precinct on 9.5 in Van Dyke. City owns about approximately 5 acres. The DDA owns. And I've already talked to the police chief and the police commissioner, and I've already talked to the controller about how we can fund this, and we can fund it through DDA funds because it falls into the DDA. Second of all, I'll be proactive. I will bring back the neighborhood watch programs. I will bring the police student, increase the police student mentoring in schools, and we will have children's safety programs. We will be proactive, like I said, in fighting crime.
Jim Fouts, rebuttal?
Gee, there's so many things I'd like to react to his constant personal bashing. Number one, Mr. Salaka failed to tell that he was in the pension system, and he drained the pension system of a large amount of money when he left. And I've been in the pension system, and I haven't taken any money out. So I have saved the taxpayers by staying in the pension. He basically wanted instant gratification. Mr. Salaka has had a bankruptcy problem. He's owed money, and he needed to take care of his financial needs, so he wanted the 401 so he could basically grab the money and run, and that's what he did. I chose to stay in there. When I heard these charges that he made by his city controller who's backing him and campaigning for him, I assumed they might be true, so I proposed an ordinance to take care of that. But I live a modest means. I haven't had a new suit in 10 years. I don't buy a new car. I'm not concerned at all about money. And unlike Mr. Salaka, I've never filed for bankruptcy.
Amber Hunt, follow-up?
Yes. You didn't say what you would do to combat crime, though, so I would like to hear that.
Well, thank you. What I would do to combat crime is Mr. Salaka failed to mention that I proposed the mobile mini station much before he did, and so that would be a strong point I would have. In addition, I believe we need to eliminate the police chief. The city of Warren is the only city that has both a police commissioner and a police chief, both making benefits of around $200,000 a year. I will eliminate the position of police chief and put that money toward having more police officers patrolling the neighborhoods. In addition, I think we need to fight blight, and I would also have inspectors who work 7 days a week and who can also patrol the neighborhood and look for issues such as that. So I think a mobile police mini station, eliminating police bureaucracy, and above all else, I'm going to appoint a police commissioner who is professional, who has concerns for the citizen and his officers, and will not be selling tickets for the committee to elect Jim Fouts. Unlike my opponent, who raised $220,000 in contributions, I only raised $11,000.
All right, Richard Salaka.
Well, my opponent fails to mention that regarding his negative campaigning. Last week, he came out with a negative piece of campaigning, but his little portion of it said, my supporters want me to go negative, so I can go negative now. So that's what happened on his he failed to mention that. He talks about the dollars I took because I filed bankruptcy. Yes, I did file bankruptcy 15 years ago. And you know what? He doesn't understand what it is to have a family and to have 3 children. He's never had that issue. He's never had to worry about anybody besides Jim Fouts. Well, I did struggle, and I turned it around. And I have 3 children. My family and I, we entered into a partnership, and the partnership went bad, and we filed bankruptcy. But in addition to that, Mr. Fouts also fails to mention that each year he's on the city, he's as mayor, the city will cost $50,000 to put into the pension fund. My total contribution was $50,000 for my 8 years.
All right. Brian Lowers, next question, please, to Jim Fouts. Brian?
Jim, we've talked a lot about fighting blight. You and I have talked about it. We've heard a lot about it in the media probably over the last 18 months or so. The blight court has come and gone. What do you believe is the best mechanism for fighting blight, and how would you go about implementing that plan?
The best mechanism is accountability, and if I'm elected mayor, the inspectors will have a specific job assigned to them on Friday, and they will have to report back to myself as mayor to explain what they've done. And we will have a step-by-step approach to fighting blight. In addition, I think that we need to have a hotline where residents can call regarding blight. Those are 2 key things we need in order to take care of the serious problem of blight. I do not believe in the blight court. I believe our own judges can do that. And the present proposal for the blight court basically was a flawed proposal that would have involved outside judges. And I might add that I came up with a property maintenance proposal too, and I'm the councilman who took photos of the Warren Plaza apartments and demonstrated that we did have serious blight problems, and I've been doing that about the older section of Warren for some time.
Richard Salaka, rebuttal?
Well, we need stricter enforcement of our ordinances, number 1. Number 2, I agree with my opponent regarding a neighborhood hotline, but we do presently have a centralized program that's not used to its potential. The city of Warren has that program. And I think that we should not have voicemail when someone calls in to file a complaint. I will have a real person answering the phone. As a matter of fact, my department is the only department in City Hall that doesn't have voicemail. You have a real person. I also will implement an Eyes and Ears program. The Eyes and Ears program will be a community lookout program that will involve all our departments, the water department, the police department, the fire department. Everyone will call into the centralized program, and then we will follow up and we'll prioritize the concerns. So I have a plan to fight blight in the neighborhoods.
All right, Rob Davidak, please ask Richard Salaka the next question. Rob?
Sir, some people have said that the neighborhoods have been lost in the current administration. They've kind of been in the background. I've heard you talk a lot about business and bringing business and economic development to the city. What is your plan outside of blight for the neighborhoods and to make them better?
Well, first I have to say my community involvement started in the neighborhoods. My community involvement 23 years ago was when I was president of the South Homeowners of Warren. And we fought the adult bookstores from coming into the neighborhoods because my family owned a grocery store on 8 Mile Road in Mound, and we fought the adult bookstores from moving in to the city, and we won. We won. So my concern is neighborhoods. I understand that to improve community, you have to improve neighborhoods. If we have to go into the neighborhoods block by block, home by home to improve them, then we will do that. And what we'll do is, like I said earlier, we will strictly enforce the ordinances. I've had a proposal when I was a councilman to add additional inspectors, and I think we need to have additional inspectors, and we need to have the police department working with the inspectors to make sure that the ordinances are enforced.
Jim Fouts, rebuttal.
Would you repeat the question again, please, for me?
Sure. In the current administration, it seems like the neighborhoods have been lost. In the background, they're not in the forefront. What is your plan to make sure that they are improved?
All right, I think it starts with a friendly city hall. It starts with a professional staff. I, too, would like to have a real person answering the phone. But the problem presently is that when a citizen calls up, they don't know who to talk to or what to talk to. So we need to take care of that. We also need to have a hotline available for people after hours and on weekends so that people can contact the city about problems that occur after hours and on weekends. That would help solve the problems of blight.
All right. Next question, Amber Hunt from the Free Press. Please ask Jim Fouts.
Actually, if you don't mind me following up on that, how do you propose to pay for the centralized answering service?
Well, I think number one, if I'm elected mayor, I'm going to eliminate rig bid contracts and no bid contracts, and that will give us more money. For example, my opponent, Mr. Salaka, has his first cousin, Elham Shaitoa, who has got a big contract through Sigma for $6 million. The original contract was $300,000, and now it's $6 million. They also were put in charge of sand filters for the waste treatment plant, and they botched that up, and now it's going to cost the city additional millions of dollars. So I'm going to eliminate those rig bid or no bid contracts and make all people who bid on it accountable and get the best amount of money for the taxpayers. And I think that's what we can do, and on a regular basis I raise questions about that. In addition, Mr. Salaka commented on the bankruptcy earlier, but what he failed to tell is he did not list his council salary as part of his bankruptcy filing.
All right, rebuttal, Mr. Salaka.
Well, first of all, we will have to pay for that. We will look at consolidating services, the building department, the planning department, all different departments. If we have to take the property maintenance division and put them together to cut costs and to bring in someone just to answer the phones for this hotline, for this Eyes and Ears program, then we will do that. But Mr. Fouts, again, you should tell the truth. You should tell that it was your council. I wasn't on the council when they gave the $6 million bid to Sigma. That was your council, and if your failed leadership, if you wanted to stop that bid from going, and they were supposedly gone through in the administration recommendation, had nothing to do with me. I was the city clerk, and city clerks don't vote on contracts. You didn't tell them that, did you? Why don't you tell them the truth, Mr. Fouts?
Follow up? Okay, Brian Lowers. Next question to Mr. Salaka. Brian?
Richard, Warren currently has 2 large new libraries, but some residents have expressed their desire to have the branch libraries back and keep the ones that still exist in operation. How do you sit with that? Do you feel the city needs to move towards a more centralized library system, or should they keep the branch libraries funded?
Well, you know what? My proposal that I'm going to be making on Van Dyke and 9 Mile Road is going to propose that part of that will be a library that will service the older sections of town. So I do believe in branch libraries. But I do understand that you can't make all these promises to people, unlike my opponent, who's made promises that he will open up the pool, that he will bring back the Fitzgerald Rec Center, that he will bring back the helicopters. And you know what? If my opponent is elected and brings back all of the luxuries that we'd like to have, I'd love to have them, but they're $25 or $26 million. The problem with my opponent is that he's been on council for 26 years, and he doesn't understand a budget. He does not understand a budget. How can he stand here and make these promises to the citizens of this city of how he's going to do this or how he's going to do this, and all he does is vote no, and he doesn't tell the truth? Well, Jim, people have the right to know.
Jim Fouts, rebuttal.
Mr. Salaka, I'd remind you I do understand a budget. Not only have I worked on 26 general fund budgets and 26 water budgets, but unlike you, Mr. Salaka, I can balance my own housekeeping budget, and I've never had to pay bankruptcy. I have never had to owe the federal government hundreds of thousands of dollars, and I also respect the taxpayers by the fact that I have never had an absenteeism like you. You have only been to City Hall for 30% of the time. You've been absent 70% of the time. I visited your office Friday and you weren't there, and I've even talked with some of your help, and they say you occasionally show up for work. So, Mr. Salaka, you don't understand a budget either. You don't understand your own budget, and if you can't balance your own books, if you can't take care of your own budget, then how can you take care of a $100 million budget? And by the way, we do have the money for some of those items. If we eliminate those rig bid contracts like Mr. Salaka's cousin, Elham Shaitoa, who he lobbied for, then we will have money for the taxpayers.
All right, we'll get that. Brian, you have a follow-up question?
I do. Jim, would you keep the branch libraries open? Would you reopen the one that has been closed?
No, I believe that the residents want the branch libraries open. There are many people, and by the way, one of the branch libraries was closed because of the drainage from the DDA money-eating machine, but I want to keep the branch libraries open and the central library. I think we are a community of neighborhoods, and we need those neighborhood branch libraries.
Richard Salaka, rebuttal to that?
Yes, I'd like to make a rebuttal regarding me not going to work. He knows that the figures claiming that I go to work 30% of the time are based solely on swipe card reports. These swipe cards are not used for attendance purposes. They are not mandatory and most definitely not an accurate method of recording attendance. So, Mr. Fouts, for you to stand here and to say, I only go to work 30% of the time, you ought to be ashamed of yourself, because you know what? You walk into City Hall and ask anybody what elected official is there 100% of the time. If I wasn't there because you come checking on me on Friday and speaking to my employees to check on, Mr. Fouts, I don't report to you. As you know, I'm an elected official. I don't need to report to you. If you have a problem with my department, Mr. Fouts, then you have your opportunity the time I come to you on budget time. Also, your literature says I have a city car, Mr. Fouts. I don't own a city car, and I don't drive a city car. I gave that back a couple years ago, Mr. Fouts.
All right. Rob Davidek, please ask Jim Fouts the next question. Rob?
Mr. Fouts, there's been a lot made about the water department, the Detroit Water and Sewerage Department, as well as relationships south of 8 Mile with Detroit and the region. How do you intend to improve that relationship with Detroit? And also, do you support Warren being involved in setting up their own water system, or partnering with a new water system?
Well, I'm always open to anything that will save the taxpayers' money, but like I say, we can save the taxpayers' money if we will eliminate the rig bid contracts of my opponent. That is El Ham Shiota Sigma, which has received millions and millions of dollars from the city. Originally, Mr. Salaka's cousin, El Ham Shiota, had a bid for $300,000, and that contract ballooned up to $6 million. We also have rig bids involving EMA Associates. We have EarthTech. We have Skyline. We have a lot of money that's being wasted in the water department, and in addition to that, we have a lot of nepotism, and friends and relatives are being employed there in other parts of the city. If I become mayor, I'm going to reevaluate that whole process and make sure that our taxpayers are only charged through the actual amount of increase that comes from Detroit, not the over-increase. And the reason why taxes keep going up is because of my opponent's rig bid contracts.
Hold on. We will get into that. Watch the time. Richard Salaka, rebuttal, please.
As far as the lawsuit with the city of Detroit, I agree with the lawsuit, and I feel that if the city of Detroit is overcharging Warren residents, we need to continue that lawsuit, and we need full disclosure from the city of Detroit to allow us to make sure that our citizens are not being overcharged. But Mr. Fouts brings up the point about Sigma and Associates. This is another example of his failed leadership. His failed leadership. If he was such a leader, why didn't he put 5 votes together to stop this? A leader was able to build consensus. Mr. Fouts has never been able to build consensus. And he doesn't even understand what a rigged bid is. He's sitting here talking about rigged bids. He's sitting here talking about how people are given contracts that he doesn't know. He doesn't understand. He misleads the public, and this is what he's been doing.
All right, thank you. We'll get it. Rob Davidek, you want to follow up?
It went from rig bid, from relationship in Detroit to rig bid. And I wanted to know about the relationship south of 8 Mile as well in that, and I didn't hear anything about that relationship, with the city.
I would like to respond to that and also respond to my opponent. My opponent doesn't understand that I've been a leader for 26 years. That's why the voters elected me the top vote getter in '95 and also the top vote getter in 2003. I've had leadership on the council, and let me remind my opponent that we had an insurance contract in which the mayor proposed rebidding the insurance from the present contractor, Dickinson, and I was the deciding vote to save the taxpayers millions of dollars. My opponent voted against that, and therefore he failed in his opportunity to save the taxpayers' money. In terms of regionalism, I believe we need a regional approach. I'll give you an example of how we could help in fighting crime. My opponent is cynical about putting up the helicopter unit, but I believe we could, with a regional approach using Detroit, Hazel Park, and some of the surrounding cities, we could fight crime and have a regional helicopter unit to fight crime. We could also do that with insurance. Okay. We could also do that with cleanup.
Okay, Mr. Fouts. Okay, watch the time. Mr. Salaka, rebuttal to that, please.
Yes. I have been endorsed by the Greater Detroit Chamber of Commerce because I'm the only candidate that's been endorsed by the Detroit Free Press, by the Detroit News, by the UAW, because I can work with labor and I can work with business and I can work with the region. And I believe it's very important because I don't believe Warren is a fortress. Warren is part of a large regional area, and we have the same problems that our neighbors to the south has, that neighbors to the east and west has. So I would recommend that one of my first duties, if I get elected, will be to call a regional conference in the city of Warren to bring all the leaders from the surrounding communities and to sit down and talk about problems that we have and how we could address the problems that are mutual problems.
All right. Amber Hunt, please ask the next question to Richard Salaka. Amber?
Okay. Obviously, the city of Warren is seeing a surge in its South End diversity population. We're seeing more African Americans, more Mexicans, more Asians. What kinds of challenges do you see that is bringing to the city, if any?
Well, I think that we have to be understanding of all the different diverse communities that are coming into the city of Warren. And I would work with the school districts. I think the city needs to work hand in hand with the school districts. And I welcome young families to come into Warren to make sure that the homes that are in foreclosure, the vacant homes, the vacant schools come in. And I will work with like I said, we'll work with the school districts to make sure that we are able to provide whatever needs to be provided for them people to come together in Warren, because Warren is a melting pot of all different communities, German, Ukrainian, Polish, African American, and I think we have to address that situation, and I will when I become mayor.
Jim Fouts?
Would you repeat that question again so I make sure I got it? Thank you.
The diversity on the South End is growing. We have more minority populations there. Does that bring any challenges to the city?
Well, I think Warren is a small microcosm of the United States. Multi-ethnic development is throughout the United States. I believe a majority of people in kindergarten and public schools are or will soon be a minority, Hispanic, or what have you. So certainly we have to keep that in mind. But I want to remind my opponent, he said I don't understand family values. I've been helping Warren families for 26 years with a variety of neighborhood concerns. When my opponent was on the council with me, he was angry because I would bring up neighborhood concerns on the council. He wasn't interested in helping Warren families with neighborhood concerns. As a matter of fact, he proposed removing me as council president because he got tired of me bringing up neighborhood concerns. So I have family values too, Mr. Salaka. The thing is that I'm not interested in helping out family members like Elham Shiota, your first cousin. I'm interested in helping out Warren families with their neighborhood concerns.
Okay, Amber, follow-up?
Yes, I'm also curious in terms of the growing diversity. Do you think that, say, the city's police department should also reflect that growth and diversity in terms of who is on staff?
I have no objection to the police reflecting that diversity. I just want to state that if I become mayor, I'm going to represent all people regardless of race, creed, ethnic, or financial concern. And if you went to my fundraiser, if you went to my victory party on election night, I had a wide variety of people that represented all races and all ethnics. And they were there because they want a voice in city government. They want city government to speak for them and not the special interest groups of my opponent. That's why I only raised $11,000 to my opponent's $220,000. And when I become mayor, I will represent all of the people because I don't have the financial obligations that my opponent does.
Mr. Salaka?
First of all, let me address the situation with neighborhood concerns. Mr. Fouts, again, is not telling the truth. Neighborhood concerns, the reason that Mr. Fouts marches these residents to the city council meeting only because he wants the airtime, only because he wants them to. He's never resolved the problem. He can't resolve the problem. He has to understand he's a legislator. A legislator and an administrator are two different bodies. He can't tell the administration what to do, and he knows that. But he'll sit there and bring the residents into the city council meeting and let them go to the council meeting and allow them to speak, and he can't get the job done. That's the problem with my opponent. My opponent has never been able to get the job done, has never been able to build consensus, and has never been able to put 5 votes together on the city council. Again, failed leadership on the part of Mr. Fouts.
All right. Brian Lowers, please ask Jim Fouts the next question. Brian?
Jim, the city currently runs a fund balance as part of its budget. It's millions of dollars. Some believe that keeping that balance, some folks at City Hall believe that keeping it is critical to maintaining the city's high bond rating. How do you weigh those concerns with spending a portion of it to restore services or add new services?
Well, the bond rating, I think, is predicated on all this bonding that we keep doing. The city has gone out of control on bonding, such as Mr. Salaka's Elham Shiota Sigma and Associates is a bonding for $6 million. We have more bondings related to Elham Shiota, and the city needs to put a stop to excess bonding because you can't continue to bond and spend money you don't have. So that's where we can take care of that problem as far as I'm concerned. And I think eliminating rig bid, no bid contracts, also eliminating positions that we don't need, like the police chief, like the deputy mayor, like the outside counsel that we have for our labor relations department. There are areas that we can save the taxpayers money, and on a regular basis, which is what Mr. Salaka never did when he was on the council, I go through the list of bills and I raise questions about wasteful expenditure of taxpayer money, like Elham Shiota Sigma contract.
Mr. Salaka, rebuttal.
I think it's very important to maintain our bond rating. I think that I know that the bond that the percentage that the finance companies charge the city of Warren is directly related to the bond rating. And I understand that if our bond rating goes down, that it'll cost more to the taxpayers. Something that Mr. Fouts doesn't understand. Mr. Fouts' proposals to bring back the helicopter. I'd like to ask you, Mr. Fouts, do you know how much it's going to cost to bring back the helicopter? Because I do, because I investigated it. I didn't make these wild promises to people. It'll cost the city of Warren $5 million. All the promises you've made to the Warren residents will cost the city $27 million. Do you know what our rainy day fund is? Do you know you would spend every dime of our rainy day fund? You will bankrupt this city, Mr. Fouts. So you want to talk about who understands budgets and who doesn't understand budgets?
All right, thank you, Mr. Salaka. Rob Davidoff, please ask the next question to Richard Salaka. Rob?
Sir, as it pertains to the Macomb County Executive, if there is a push for a Macomb County Executive, would you support that? And also, would you be willing to use city funds to support a Macomb County Executive?
Okay. First of all, I'll answer the second part of your question. No, I wouldn't be willing to spend city funds to support a Macomb County Executive. What I would be willing to do, and I haven't made up my mind, I haven't decided whether the executive is the right place to go or not to go. But I understand that we need leadership at the county level, and if the voters if the voters decide that the best way to manage this county is by a county executive, then I would support the county executive. But I think we need to leave it up to the voters.
Jim Fouts, rebuttal.
Regional approach to the helicopter unit could be one way to solve the financial problem. Mr. Salaka indicates that I'm going to bankrupt the city. With Mr. Salaka's lobbying for all of these no-bid, rig-bid contracts of his relatives, that's what's bankrupting the city. And with Mr. Salaka basically raiding the pension fund and taking money out of the pension fund and using it to pay off his debts because of his bankruptcy, that's another way of bankrupting the city. I believe Mr. Salaka, my opponent, owes too much. He's raised $220,000. It's probably going to be $500,000 by the time the election's over, and he's going to owe all these developers and people. He's promised jobs to all these people in City Hall. And by the way, if you look at his campaign expense report, most of the administrators in City Hall are backing Mr. Salaka. I have not received one penny from Steenberg appointees. Mr. Salaka has received a lot. He's also had a fundraiser where he's...
All right, hold on. We'll get that. Rob Devitt, follow?
Macomb County Executive.
Do I support? I would allow the people to vote on that and let the people decide.
Richard Salaka, you can respond to that?
Yes. First of all, I'd like to respond. Again, Mr. Fouts is telling a lie regarding the pension system. He knows very well that my pensions, that the pension 401 has to be left with the city. I never took a dime out of that pension, and he knows that. But again, he's lying to the public the way he's done for 26 years, okay? Misleading the public. As far as the, as far as what he talks about with Sigma Associates, Sigma was not my, I disclosed any relationship I had with Sigma, which she was my cousin, but Mr. Fouts, again, is making it an issue because there are no issues. The issue is his $1 million pension. That's the issue. Mr. Fouts, why don't you admit you have a $1 million pension? You were at the council meeting. Why didn't you tell him? It was you and Mr. Demas who made the deal. You walked in Mr. Demas's room and you made a deal 36 hours after the election. You and George Demas made the deal.
Okay. Amber Hunt, please ask Mr. Fouts the next question. Amber?
Actually, I'd like to ask Mr. Sleck the next question. He's brought up your cousin quite a few times, and so I'd like to give you the opportunity to explain.
Isn't it my turn now?
It's actually Jim Fouts. Let me get Jim. It's okay. Jim Fouts. They can each answer it, though.
You can each answer. I'm looking to find out exactly what you mean by this cousin relationship.
Okay, I want to review what the question was again because he was rambling on, and I forgot the question in his rambling.
Okay, you've brought up his cousin and a business venture several times. Can you expand on that for people who don't know what you're talking about?
Okay, his cousin got several years ago, his cousin who owns Sigma and Associates got a bid to do some efficiency work and engineering work with the waste treatment plant. And originally it was for $300,000 and that ballooned to $6 million. In addition, they were asked to help design the sand filters. And one of his supporters, Mr. Monet, admitted that they didn't design it right, and that cost the taxpayers, it will be probably an additional $1 to $2 million. And we have a lot of professional services like that are costing the taxpayers a lot of money. If we eliminated those so-called professional services, which are really rigged bid because there are no bid contracts where people get the bids because they have friends or relatives in city government, then we could save the taxpayers money. But I must remind Mr. Salaka, if he wants to save the taxpayers money, he should pay back the $456,000 that he owes the taxpayers from lack of attendance.
Mr. Salaka, rebuttal.
Yes, I'd like to say, you know, Mr. Fouts talks about being a neighborhood councilman and working with the neighborhoods and being active. But you know what? Mr. Fouts has never served on a committee. Mr. Fouts has been on that city council for 26 years. Never served on any committees. Never shows up for any committee meeting. You know what? The one committee that you served on was the wastewater treatment plant committee. And you know what, Mr. Fouts? You didn't even know where the wastewater treatment plant was, did you? You went into City Hall and asked the controller, where is the wastewater treatment plant? Mr. Fouts, you know, you talk a good game, but tell the truth, Mr. Fouts. That's the problem. You mislead the citizens of this city, and you've misled them, and I won't allow you to do that any longer.
Amber, follow-up?
Yeah, I was still hoping to find out your take on the cousin business venture. I mean, he's mentioned it many, many times.
There is no take on it, Amber. There's no take on it. I revealed my relationship with that she was my cousin, and I was not on the council. I was clerk. Clerks don't run. The mayor recommended to the council that her bid get approved. She owns the company. So there's nothing there. She did the work for the city of Warren, and obviously he's upset because there was a relationship there. I don't know. If there was any fraud, then you should report it to whoever the FBI or the state police or whoever it is. He can sit here and make accusations, but let me tell you something, there's nothing to those accusations. As a matter of fact, my cousin supported my opponent. I don't even talk to my cousin supported my opponent in the primary. It didn't give me a dime, but she gave Mindy more dollars. So Mr. Fouts is making these accusations. There's no substance to them, but he has to bring up something, and I would love for him to put it on the table.
Mr. Fouts, rebuttal?
Okay, I'm not sure what I want to rebut, but I'll respond to several different things that he stated. He keeps saying I'm going to bankrupt the city of Warren, but I keep reminding him that he filed bankruptcy. Jim Fouts never filed bankruptcy. Not only when he filed bankruptcy, he failed to indicate his council salary. I think that's a felony. I think he could be in trouble for that. And he keeps saying that I've lied. He lied to the federal government, and I think that's pretty serious. In a deposition under oath, he talks about being a leader, but when it came to a deposition under oath dealing with the insurance lawsuit, which he had voted the wrong way on, they asked him what his job was of clerk, and he said, quote, "I don't do the day-to-day work, I don't know." So as clerk, he admitted he didn't run the office, and basically one of the reasons why he probably doesn't run the office because he never goes to work. So I don't see how he could state he would be a mayor when he is an absent mayor and when he is someone who is financially bankrupt.
All right, thank you, Mr. Fouts. So we only have time for one more question. I will ask the question, if you had been mayor during the last year or so, would you have exercised your veto power? It hasn't been exercised all that often in Warren. Would you exercise the veto power? And we'll start that with Mr. Salaka.
No, because I feel that I'm able to build consensus. I'm able to build consensus, and I'm able to sit down with the council members and sit down and be able to agree to disagree. My administration will not run by threats and intimidations. But I know whoever gets elected on the city council, I've worked with them before, and I can work with the council members again. I don't know that I would have in the last year, there's no items that I would have exercised my veto power because, again, I'm a consensus builder, and I would work with the city council.
All right. Mr. Fouts, rebuttal.
Two specific points I would have vetoed. One, the development of the new city hall. I would have vetoed that because it should have been a vote of the people. According to Section 8.1 of the city charter, if you issue general obligation bonds pledged to the full faith and credit of the citizens, you need a 3/5 voter approval. I tried to get that from the council, and they didn't. As a mayor, I would have vetoed it. Also, the Grand Saqua project. That project was ill-begot. It should have had wider roads. The roads are only 22 feet wide. They should be 28. They're asphalt. They should be concrete. Those roads are going to crumble like pie crust. And that project should have been better. They have substandard size homes. The homes are built on 55-foot lots when the minimum size in the city is 60-foot lots. And that project could have been a lot better. So those two specific things I would have vetoed until the citizens had a chance to discuss those and vote on the referendum on the city hall.
All right, we do not have time for a follow-up, unfortunately, but that will end the second part of the debate, question and answers. Now, we will move to the final part of the debate. Lots were drawn before the debate to determine the speaking order to give the closing statements, and Jim Fouts will give the first closing statement. Mr. Fouts.
As your neighborhood councilman, I'm committed to change, and change is needed in the city of Warren. Rather than empty rhetoric and personal attacks and rambling such as my opponent gave tonight, I want to represent the people, and I want to be the neighborhood councilman. That means that when it comes to, for example, the situation in Southwest Warren where we had a drug house on Rome Street, I'm going to go there and I'm going to clean up the drug houses, and I'm going to have more inspectors, I'm going to have more police, I'm going to require that there be some registration of vacant homes that cause these type of problems, such as in the Southeast where we had a serious problem of prostitution, where I met with residents at midnight and I went on patrol and I was able to see firsthand the serious problem of prostitution, and I was able to get some change taken. People throughout the city of Warren are pleading for more help. They don't want bashing, they don't want personal attacks, they want action. And as your city council president, and soon to be, hopefully, your mayor, your neighborhood mayor. It will be first priority to clean up the neighborhoods and to make them safe. If you believe that I do, that we need change and we don't need business as usual, giving jobs and contracts to relatives and friends and cronies, then please vote for Jim Fouts. And if you would like to help out, my phone number is 573-8058. I promise you that if you help me, I will help you, and I will be a hands-on mayor. One of the things that I do on a regular basis is that I am a jogger, and I run 3 to 5 miles a day, and I'm very disciplined at what I do. And when I become mayor, that jog will continue to you, and it will be a disciplined effort to make sure that people in Warren have a voice in city government.
Thank you, Jim Fouts. Now, final closing statement, Richard Salaka. Mr. Salaka.
For 26 years, Jim Fouts has been a councilman. For 26 years, he has taken Warren in the wrong direction. Time and time again, we have followed him. But where has he led us? He has led us backwards. He opposed the tank plant development that has brought thousands of jobs to Warren already. He opposed GM's redevelopment of the tech center, and even went to a council meeting in the city of Troy to fight General Motors bringing 1,500 new jobs to the tech center. He opposed the new residential development at 12 Mile and Mound. It is time to bring an end to that type of leadership. Jim Fouts is a political insider, and he has left our city without jobs and thousands of home foreclosures. What I have done in politics has been effective. When pornography was a problem, I brought neighbors together and we fought the system, shut down the pornography store and won. When I led the fight for term limits, I asked Jim Fouts to second the motion to place it on the ballot. He refused. You see, Jim Fouts is a career politician. I'm not. I took on the system and won. And by doing so, the people of Warren won. Don't forget, the end of the Steenberg administration is a direct result of term limits. Let's take our city back. The voters need to think about the future of Warren. Do they want the organized, efficient plan that I offer, or do you want the chaos and confusion that is my opponent? As mayor, I will bring the leadership and the consensus building required to move this great city of Warren forward. Warren's future depends on your vote. Please vote for me for mayor on November 6th. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard Salaka. And that will conclude the debate. Thank you, candidates. Thank you, panelists. And especially thank you, the audience, for tuning in. I'd also like to thank Fox 2 News for the live web stream of this debate. And, of course, everybody here at TV Warren. Remember, vote Tuesday, November 6th, 2007. From all of us here, I'm Charlie Langton. Good night.